Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Ocarina of Time. Do do do. It's the LP Podcast. It is Tuesday, which of course means it's time to talk about the daily happenings in Nintendo World from today, the prior day, and the preceding 5 days as well for an altogether week of summarization. Starting here, today specifically is Ocarina of Time's 25th birthday. And goodness sakes, if that doesn't make me feel old, I don't know what does. Ocarina of Time was the very first Zelda game that I owned, the very first Zelda game that I played, the very first Zelda game that I beat. So as you might imagine, I have a huge amount of love and respect for it. And the fact that it's 2.5 decades old now and is no less potent in terms of my love for it, I think is awesome. Right? Because everyone has games that they grow up with, games that mean something to them because they played them at an early age. We call this association nostalgia, right? And it's not just exclusive to video games. It could be any form of media. It could be a stuffed animal. It could be your favorite dehydrated cheese curd that you keep under your pillow at night. Not judging or calling out in particular, but you know who you are. Anyways, that being the case, Ocarina of Time is not something, in my opinion, that is only upheld or beloved purely based on nostalgic purposes. I think that it set the tone in a way. Back when it came out 25 years ago, it set the tone for what was the next evolution in 3D gaming. It really set the bar, and without Ocarina of Time, sure, maybe something else would have filled the void or would have provided that same level of inspiration, but I think it cannot be understated just how awesome of an experience that playing Ocarina of Time has been for myself personally or for the greater gaming landscape. I'm curious. Normally I don't start off with questions, but what is your first experience with Ocarina of Time? What is your overall opinion of it? Do you hold some level of nostalgia for it? If not, it's got to be at least a little bit of respect, right? I'll recant my first memory of Ocarina of Time, and it's kind of a funny one. So when I grew up in the 90s, we would visit this location, this business, if you will, called Blockbuster. You may be well familiar, they're since out of business, but you would rent movies or video games there. I, of course, was predominantly concerned with the latter half of that. So while my parents would go rent things like Titanic or Casablanca or what have you, I staring at the N64 games. I had heard about Ocarina of Time through a schoolmate, and I thought to myself, why not? I love swords. I love medieval fantasy sort of things. Of course, being a child, I wasn't 100% certain what I loved, but I did have some semblance of interest in those genres. So we rented it, and we rented it a few more times after that. In fact, they had the one cartridge at our particular Blockbuster, and Ocarina of Time from the era of N64, you didn't have local save files. The save files were stored on the game cartridge itself. So I, as well as this other unnamed individual, would share the game back and forth, back and forth. However, on my first time renting it, I didn't understand this. I just saw that slot 1 was occupied. I said, what? I gotta have slot 1. I mean, I'm an insolent little 6-year-old. I need it. I have to have it. So I deleted it. Oh, it's not a second sense then that I don't feel bad about it, because the very next time we rented it, the second slot was filled. And what was their name? Please save. Don't delete it. Never again did I make that same mistake. Either which way, we eventually ended up purchasing the game and never ended up running into any more issues like that. But this is a long-winded way of saying happy birthday, Ocarina of Time. Moving on, that's not the only Zelda thing in the news as of late. Apparently, there's a college course using Zelda Tears of the Kingdom to teach students engineering. The University of Maryland specifically is offering a mechanical engineering course that teaches machine design using The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That's awesome. I think that's super innovative on the professor's part and super, well, how do I put this? Forward thinking by the university themselves, because this is not free. Obviously, otherwise we would have gotten a headline of Nintendo donates X amount of consoles and game cartridges to the university. No, This is undoubtedly coming out of the department's budget, and sure, they own the consoles. They'll take them back and try and incorporate them in future lesson plans. But still, it's a significant expense, number one. Number two, a little bit perhaps less, how do we say this, traditional of a teaching method. And I think that there are plenty of different avenues for this, right? You want to teach physics classes with Katamari Damacy? We got ideas here. Either which way, good on you, University of Maryland, and the professor. We'll see here if the professor's named. Yes, Professor Ryan D. Sochal. I may have butchered that. Constructed a pilot course for second-year mechanical engineering undergrads at the University of Maryland College Park that teaches students design and engineering through playing Zelda. The class itself is aptly named The Legend of Zelda: A Link to Machine Designs. So cool. So cool, so cool. So every student gets a Switch, a Pro Controller, and a copy of Tears of the Kingdom for the entire semester. Very cool. And there he is himself, the professor, clearly a Zelda fan, holding up the Hylian shield as well as a Master Sword struck to his backside. Excellent. Good on you, Professor. Well done. Speaking of using Nintendo IPs in perhaps unconventional methods, I couldn't help but notice this headline. Nintendo's upcoming tech hints at a never-ending Pokemon journey. What does that mean? That sounds counterintuitive to a business. Let's dig in. U.S. patent application number titled Content Holding System, Storage Medium, and Content Holding Server was first filed last year and recently published on November 9th, 2023. It outlines a sophisticated server infrastructure designed to store and update individual Pokemon data seamlessly between games. At its core is a common area that contains universal Pokemon parameters like species, types, moves, effort values, and experience that remain constant across all games. Additionally, it describes inherent areas that store game-specific attributes, events, and memories, almost like achievements or souvenirs from each region and adventure. So, I don't completely understand what it means or how it really differs from Pokemon Home. You can see that Pokemon Home is actually referenced here, mentioning that the new tech appears to build on and significantly extend those features from Pokemon Home. But at this point in time, it's probably anyone's guess what this really means, number one. And number two, just because the company is filing for patents, well, we already know that doesn't mean anything. Right? We've seen what happens when gaming companies, or even Nintendo specifically, file for patents. They're just stashing things away, not necessarily for immediate or even eventual use. But it is a thought-provoking argument all the same. What do you think? You think there's some legs to this? Do you think this stands to be a real platform, a real service here in the immediate future? Or is it just largely, well, as we mentioned, the company covering their bases? More on Pokemon yet ahead. The COO of the company wants to keep franchise going for hundreds of years. Underscored, I spend all day, every day thinking about Pokemon. Of course you do. You're the COO, the chief operating officer. Your entire livelihood is completely tied to the company itself. And what for? Money. All right, so of course you want the franchise to go for 100 years. This is like anyone saying they want their job to stay around for hundreds of years, to possibly outlive them themselves. And I get it, that's fine. Maybe I'm just being a little bit cynical. But the point is, I don't think this is inherently news. It did make headlines. People were talking about it because, whoa, 3-digit years. Ooh. There you have it. I, too, hope Pokemon goes around for 100 years. I won't be here to enjoy it, but goodness sakes, that would mean that I had gotten some significant amount of entertainment between now and then, if in fact the company is able to continue pushing forward for hundreds of years. Now, this of course raises the question about whether or not they'll improve on Scarlet and Violet, which, while not terrible games, did have a certain amount of flaws. If you catch my drift. Anyways, moving on, Mario drops out of the top 20 sales. Mario Kart 8 specifically, excuse me. There's always a Mario game in the top 20 sales, but Mario Kart 8 released nearly a decade ago, 2014. It has been a mainstay in the top 20 charts. 78 weeks straight in the top 20 has come to an end. Incredible. That is so many copies. It's no wonder that Mario Kart itself, Deluxe 8, is one of the best-selling games of all time. I mean, really, you spend that many weeks in the top 20 constantly churning out sales. You're going to rack up some freaking numbers. You truly are. And it's no surprise either, because it is a great game that continued, as we've discussed before, previous episodes of the podcast, continued to get attention and updates. We just saw Wave 6 earlier this month get released. The final wave, indeed. So undoubtedly so, we've got something to look forward to. And it's not more top 20 sales weeks for Mario Kart, but Mario Kart 9 or 10, I guess you want to count Tour as 9. The next Mario Kart game is on the horizon, and undoubtedly Nintendo will be looking to replicate the success of 8 and all the things that made it great, hopefully before too late. More words on video game sales charts. Hogwarts Legacy returns to the top of the United Kingdom physical charts following its Switch release. Now, this is not a game that I've played. I did grow up with the Harry Potter IP. I read all the books. I watched all the movies. The author has had some, shall we say, less than ideal things to say that I don't necessarily agree with, but that's not the topic at hand right now. What the topic at hand is that Hogwarts Legacy is apparently selling really friggin' well, even on the Switch, where it was worried or concerned about having slightly less power than necessary for a proper experience. If we look down here, the game has been bumped to the #1 spot in the UK with the release of the Switch version only 1 week ago today, November 14th. Goodness gracious. So undoubtedly, some amount of influence is provided here that it is a local IP, for lack of a better word, right? J.K. Rowling, the author, is from the area. As such, the IP itself is going to sell remarkably well there. 2 new entries in the top 10, Super Mario RPG at 6, and Bluey, the video game, at number 7. Mario Wonder makes a second Mario appearance in the top 10, dropping to 5th, with Spider-Man 2 in 4th. EA Sports FC24, I believe that is a soccer football game, down to 3rd, and number 2 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Number 1 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So, not a whole lot there particularly interesting to me, other than the fact that the release of the Switch version bumped that game up significantly. Thinking of Nintendo, we don't ordinarily think of third-party games like Hogwarts Legacy, right? When you think of Nintendo, you think of the first-party IPs, the Marios, the Zeldas, the Kirbys, the Mothers, Golden Suns, F-Zero, Star Fox, Metroid, Yoshi, all the kit, kat, and caboodle of their inherent, well, personality, for lack of a better word. Now, what that means is a number of different things. Number 1, for myself, and especially on the topic of this upcoming article that I'll tell you about here, is that the employees that they have, they usually want to keep them. And in doing so, they usually want to challenge them, right? They want loyalty, they want high effort, they want hard work, and they want results. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Obviously, we as consumers and as fans stand to benefit from whatever it is that they do. But we got an interesting little tidbit here from a former employee, unnamed, I do believe. Let's just double check. It does, yeah, they are anonymous, which is fine. No. Actually, they are not. Mura Koichi. So they did not stay off the record. 45-year-old video game artist who's previously worked on Tears of the Kingdom as a landscape artist recently provided some insight about his time at the famous Japanese company. He describes Nintendo as a wonderful place, but admits that it was hell for an average person. As highlighted by Automation, or Automaton, Koishi's tell-all post has now gone viral online. He praised the company as a haven for geniuses and superhuman talent. He felt this incredible environment just wasn't for him. After realizing he wasn't suited for the role, he decided to pursue other goals. So I think that's very interesting, and it's kind of the dichotomy of one, working at just a tech company in general, more specifically a video game company. The standards are high, right? Lots of people want to be involved in this. Lots of people want to help. Lots of people want to be employed by Nintendo. So naturally, I think it makes complete sense what he's saying here, that it is a haven for geniuses, because people that are these astounding talents, and of course they're provided they're interested in this, but the people that are, sharing that center portion of the Venn diagram of being geniuses and Nintendo fans, and they choose to pursue this, well, they're obviously going to stick around, right? They're going to raise the standard as well. So if you try and get in there as like an average person, or maybe even like a lower performer, It's going to be difficult and probably not as fun as you may have thought, if that makes sense. So altogether, no real opinion on myself or by myself on this, but I do think it's interesting to see and interesting to read about, interesting to hear about someone's firsthand experiences. Now, Nintendo as a company aside, not yet. Nintendo is not without Black Friday deals. We talked about it briefly. This is Thanksgiving week in the United States, and as such, the day after Thanksgiving, called Black Friday, is a day where many sales, commerce, and happenings are happening all over the country, online or otherwise. And we are going to dive into a few of these. So Nintendo Switch OLED, $350, relatively standard, but you also get a $75 gift card at Dell, which is relatively interesting. I suppose you could buy a monitor or something and play it on that. And you'll see a number of other deals here. I will link this. This is grabbed from tomsguide.com/deals/Nintendo. None of them particularly stand out. $7 off Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. You've got $40 off, $45 actually off of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. So that's quite nice. And many, many more. I myself am never really a Black Friday person, right? People can get friggin' wild. And don't get me wrong, I love Nintendo games and Nintendo content in general, but I'm not ready to get stabbed or something, or get stampeded over, or wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to stand outside in the freezing rain. Well, thank you. I'll pay the extra $5 and get it shipped to me online. But if you're interested, here you go. And finally, last but not least, Super Mario RPG released but a few days ago. And it's a good game. I have put in about 3 hours into it now, so not a whole lot of time. However, it is a relatively shorter game, so in the grand scheme of things, I have enough to formulate an opinion, and it's good. Oh, it's real good. Not only is it a great RPG, a great entry-level RPG, should we say. It's not inherently difficult or anything like that, but it tickles the same itch for myself that Paper Mario did. Paper Mario 64 and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. You can definitely see how Paper Mario 64 was intended to be Super Mario RPG 2. There's a lot of similarities carrying over there, and that probably makes it easier for me to digest this game or to get into it. But I do think for any newcomer to the Mario RPG sort of franchise, including Paper Mario into that, this is a great opportunity for you to become introduced. And I'm not alone. Obviously, you can see here some of the critic reviews. Lots of positivity. 95 out of 100 by Alberto DeFosino. 9 out of 10, Jordan Biordi. 90 out of 100 by James Paley. 8.7. 8. 4 out of 5. A flat recommended from Mr. Bobby here. 5 out of 5. Scott McRae. 4 out of 5. 9 out of 10. 4 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 82%. 85. 7. 4. 9. Incredible. Truly. And in my opinion, all of these are not just due to the fact that it's a good game, right? Because we knew that. I mean, I didn't play the original, but if you did, you knew what the game was. A lot of this wouldn't be a surprise. What is a surprise, or relatively novel in this instance, is the fact that it is a remake, remaster. It looks beautiful, all right? There's a certain number of cutscenes in the game that straight up look like they're out of a movie. They're excellent, of course, not Lord of the Rings or something like that, but an animated film. My point is that it looks great. I love the colors, I love the saturation, and I love the renderings. I think that the whole team did a great job in remastering this, and with, Paper Mario just barely leaving my lips but moments ago, it gives me hope for the Thousand Year Door remake scheduled for next year. So I think we have a lot of things to be thankful for when it comes to Super Mario RPG. And if you haven't played it, I encourage you to. If you don't want to play it, I encourage you to watch my Let's Play of it, or I upload daily episodes of it. Anyways, on the topic of Thanksgiving, we just mentioned it moments ago. It's on the horizon for us here in the United States. It is, it's a holiday with some questionable origins, shall we say. I'm Native American, so it's just not necessarily something that we'll say is topical right now. But the point is, the grand overarching theme is thanks. And I think we can all get behind that. So what are we thankful for? In 2023, at least from a Nintendo perspective, I myself am thankful for the Mario movie. That's the first one I think of. I am thankful that Nintendo won had the cojones, had the mushrooms, had the Koopa shells to go after that and pursue it. And not only pursue it, but execute very well. Obviously, a financial success. We've talked about the Mario movie, I feel like, almost every episode of this podcast, but it fits. All right. I am glad because obviously that is spurring more Nintendo movies yet to come. The Zelda movie, anyone? On that topic, I am also thankful for The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Talking about Let's Plays, Mario RPG specifically, I'm also Let's Playing Tears of the Kingdom, and I've got darn near 200 episodes recorded for it. And obviously that would not be the case if it wasn't a great game. We talked about how Ocarina of Time was my first Zelda game. Well, it was one of my first video games in general, and as such, I've been in love with the franchise ever since. So anytime a new Zelda game comes out, it's a big deal to me. It really is. And I think that Tears of the Kingdom more than lived up to the hype that it had manifested over the preceding years, and it delivered and continues to deliver in a very, very large way. Additionally, I am thankful for Pikmin. Yes, we had a new Pikmin game this year. Not a moment too soon either. The only thing that would make me more thankful, I suppose, is perhaps a little bit more consistency, a little bit more frequency in the Pikmin games. Seems we get one like every 5 years, or I think it was 10 years actually between Pikmin 3 and 4, not counting the remaster for Switch. So if we could get more of those, I would be even more thankful. And speaking of more, I feel like this year had more Mario than many years before. All right, not only are we talking about the Mario RPG remake, but we also had Mario Wonder, the first 2D platformer in a long time. And what's more, it was a multiplayer couch co-op experience that I got to share with my wife, Serena, and I am thankful for that because it was her very first 2D platformer experience of any type, and it was an excellent, excellent introduction for her. So, lots to be thankful for from a Nintendo perspective. I'm very curious to hear what you were thankful for. Did you have a good year? It's not over yet. I hope there's still room for many more things to happen, but if this is all we get, well, I think we can be thankful for that. And I can also be thankful for you. Relatively lighter on the headlines today, barely clocking us in here at under half an hour, but that's the LP Podcast, episode 4. I sincerely hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope I get to see you again every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Alternatively, I do the Let's Play thing, so check that out too. And I hope that I see you next time.